What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a ranking video because last time I did one, you guys really seemed to enjoy it. And what you guys wanted to see most was either me ranking all of my Melt palettes or me ranking all of my Urban Decay palettes. So I went on Instagram and I ran a poll to see which one of those two you preferred, and it was pretty split. It was like almost 50-50, but Melt won by a little bit. Today we're gonna rank Melt, and I think soon we're gonna go with the Urban Decay ones. The way I usually do my ranking videos is I just start from the one that I like the least and move my way to the best. I'll show you guys close-ups of all of them as I explain what I like, what I don't like, etc, etc. And I'll try to list all of the videos where I use these palettes to create looks in the description down below. So if you want to see more about what I think of those palettes or how I used them in the past, I'll link those for your convenience. There's a lot of talking to get through in this video, so I'm not going to keep us here too long. But if you're new around here, subscribe because I would love to have you around for more videos. If you don't mind taking a second to do it, I would really appreciate it if you left a like because, you know, it's a thing that YouTube appreciates from you, and it'll help people see my videos and also let me know that you like this kind of video. Very helpful. My shirt today was designed by one of my Instagram friends, Tess Effects. I will link it on her Etsy down below because I think it is so cute and it's really comfy, and like the labeling is all really cute and well done, and I'm like super impressed with it. So if you like it too, I'm gonna leave it in the description. I think that's all of like the administrative stuff out of the way. So let's just get into it. Let me start babbling about these palettes. So I have 12 Melt palettes, and of those 12, it was really hard to rank them, quite frankly, because I really like almost all of my Melt palettes. The one that seemed the most obvious as my least favorite, though, is the Radioactive Palette. I had really high hopes for this palette because when I purchased it, it was really like in a moment where I was enjoying neons. Like it just hit me at the right moment of my life, and I was excited to play with some neon shades. The problem is that some of these shades, and this is really surprising for Melt, really just don't perform as well as I would like them to. Hazmat, the purple in here, was really patchy if I recall, and I've used these brighter shades Neon and Xenon a few times after filming with it. I don't recall how they worked when I was filming, but over different eye bases, I've noticed that these kind of like grab moisture at the edge and make that, you know, when they get that little ring where it's darker around the edge and then lighter in the middle, and I have to like build up over it a bunch of times. It's just not, they're, as far as Melt standards are concerned, these are not their best shadows. I like that they combine some darker shades in with the neons because I feel like that makes it a more versatile palette, but in general, this one just was not their best. I have a very high standard for what I expect from this brand, and this one just didn't quite live up. The next one on my list is Millennial Pinks. Millennial Pinks, honestly, the quality is really good. I don't have any issues with that whatsoever, and I actually really love the packaging on this. However, the reason I'm putting it down toward the end of the list is because I feel like this one is just one that I don't reach for that often. Now, that really is just more of I have too many palettes, but as far as my Melt collection is concerned, they are some of the palettes that I reach for the most in my day-to-day life. This one does not fall into that category. For me, for some reason, pinks just really aren't my thing. And I remember when I filmed this video, I was enjoying the challenge of mixing the pinks with the grays. I do love that, and I do really like that that's where they took it. Of course, Melt would think to do that, you know? I love their creativity with that. It's just one of those things where pink is not where my mind goes that often, so I don't find myself using it as much as I find myself using other things. Now that I'm looking at it though, I'm like, this could be really pretty for a lot of things that I'm thinking of now that I didn't think of before. Maybe I should be dipping into this one most often, but it's still staying at this spot on the list because I think that it takes something for me to be inspired by this, whereas some of the other color stories, not as much. I feel like you guys are going to be a little surprised that this one is in the middle of the pack, but it is. The next one is Veda. Now, the reason that I'm putting this one in the middle and not up toward the higher end or the lower end, depending on how you look at it, but like the best part of the list, is because now comparing this to the rest of the palettes that have come out since the Amor Eterno collection, Although it's really, really nice, I feel like the color story is not as much what I want, and I can find a lot of the shades in here that I think are really interesting within the other melt palettes that I like more as a whole. The More Eternal packaging is still some of my absolute favorite packaging that has ever come out on a makeup product, literally ever, so it can't go down to the bottom of the pile by any stretch of the imagination. And also, this release just has a special place in my heart because it was like so beautiful and so exciting at the time. More Eternal and Papel Picado, I feel like those are also present in a couple of the other palettes. Not exactly the same, but very similar. It's just now that there are more available, this one is not that unique like it was when it first came out, and I think there are others that I like better. Coming in at number 8 is the Rust palette. Now, this one, like I said, is not the most exciting in that it is a very neutral palette. However, I do think that this is one of the more balanced neutral palettes that I own, and also one of my favorites just to use. And also just the user experience of it is one of my favorites. I love that it has so many matte shades. I love mattes when it comes to neutrals. I feel like they're so necessary. Personally, I actually really like when palettes have a majority matte shades anyway. I just feel like they're so much more important to a look, and like the shimmers are just like the little icing on top, you know? And this just has those like burnt, rusty tones. Everything just blends together and merges well and just creates looks with ease, which I love. I love that there is a completely light matte shade, almost like bone color, and this one is almost like a black, but it's not. It's like off black, but like rich enough that you could use it as an eyeliner if you wanted to. The only reason this is in the middle and not the top of the pack is because it's neutral, and Melt has so many exciting color stories, but it's so solid of a palette that it can't be at the bottom of the list either. It lands more in the middle because although it's not the most exciting, it's really, really solid, and I feel like it's so well thought out, and I do find myself using it quite often. Next up at number 7, we have the Recently Deceased palette. Now, this one is from the Beetlejuice collection, and the Beetlejuice collection as a whole is one of my favorite releases that has come out in a really, really long time. But as far as color stories are concerned, this one is less just something that I find inspiring than a lot of Melt's other color stories. And so for me, it's not their best. It's a great palette. Nothing didn't perform well in it. And I remember when I was making the video thinking to myself, you know what, maybe these are your colors. Maybe you do like greens and purples. And you know what, I do. But these particular greens and purples are just not exactly what I want together in a palette necessarily. Although I have to say that some of the shades, like Draw a Door, they're really unique shades in here. And the shade Paranormal is like a stunning green shimmer, and it's so creamy, and it's a really, really nice shade. The purples by themselves are really, really pretty too. It's just as a whole, this is not a color story that inspires me as much as some of the other ones. I feel like I'm going to be a broken record in this video talking about which color stories inspired me, but when it comes down to it, except for the rare occasion where a few shades don't work as well for me, that's what I have to rank Melt by. They're so good at combining colors that you don't expect, but then they work. Speaking of that, the next one up, coming in at number 6, is the Impulsive palette. Now, this one is one of my earliest Melt palettes. I really like this palette as a whole overall. I really like it especially because I feel like it's 2 palettes in one. It's huge. This side, this one with all the more warm tones in it, is one of my favorite things to use in the fall. And this is a great example of it has some shades that are also present in Veda, but I feel like I like them better in this palette than I do in Veda, just like the overall combination of them. So this one wins out. But the reason this palette is not closer to the top of the list is the packaging. I'm not crazy about the packaging on this one, not because it's ugly or anything. It's actually really cute. It's just so bulky. I understand why they did the setup the way they did, but I feel like they could have found a way to make it a little bit more slim. It's interesting, it's cool, but when I put it in my drawer, I get so annoyed trying to fit this in with my other palettes. I just wish they found a way to make it a little bit more sleek. Generally, I do find myself using this side much more than this side. However, every now now and then, I'm like, I could use something that's a little bit more cool toned and a little bit more toned down and muted, and I pick this up and I'm like, oh yeah, this palette is like kind of the shit. Next at number 5, we have the Blueprint palette. And at the time when I did the video doing looks with this palette, I wasn't all that impressed with it compared to my other melt palettes, but over the last few weeks, I have found myself reaching for it more and more often because of the fact that I like some of the shimmers too much. The colors Deadbolt and Skylight are so pretty that I have been using them as like a pop on my inner corner all the time. I do stand by the fact that there is not a ton of improvement over the stack with this one. So if you owned the original stack, I don't think you need to run out and buy this. I still think that. But this one has really grown on me. And I also really love the packaging on this one. I love the logo. It's super dynamic. I love how thin and sleek it is. You just pop it in my drawer and it barely takes up any room. I appreciate the idea that they put neutrals in here to work with the blues. I don't find myself reaching for the neutrals nearly enough, but some of the shimmers in here have really grown on me enough that it kind of makes its way up further in the pack than I expected it to. Number 4 is She's in Parties. The theme of this palette, like, you kind of can't get nearer and nearer to my heart than this. It has literally names of like some of my favorite songs from my teenage years as eyeshadow shades. Like, how do you go wrong with that? You know what I mean? This color scheme here, this is one of like my favorite themes. When KVD came out with the first Lolita palette, it was very similar to this. I loved those shades so much. Personally, for me, like, obviously this doesn't apply to everyone, but these do really well on my eye color. I feel like they bring out like the nuances in like the hazeliness of my eyes really nicely. I also feel like it's pretty flattering on my skin tone. The quality on this one I think is so good. I love the colors. The only thing I'm not crazy about is the packaging on this one. Just out of all of these incredible designs that Melt puts out, this one is one of the least exciting ones visually on the outside, but it is still one of the ones that I find myself using most often. Not that I get to do much traveling these days, but this is one of my go-tos when I have to go somewhere because it's neutral enough that I find that it matches with anything that I want to wear, but it's also like a little bit more colorful, so I feel like it's a little bit something more special. The packaging is nice and sturdy, and it's also really thin and easy to pack. And of all the Melt palettes, I think this is one of my most reached for. Okay, so now we're in the top 3. This means the cream of the crop. Coming in at number 3, we have Smoke Sessions. I fucking love this palette. I know a lot of people were not into the weed theme. That's fine. If that's not your thing, totally get it. I like the packaging, even though it has little pot leaves on it. I think they kept it simplistic enough that it's not like too in your face. I feel like it very easily could have accidentally looked like one of those airbrush t-shirts you buy at the store at the beach. The thing that I love the absolute most about this palette, except the fact that I wish it had a couple more mattes in it, but that's neither here nor there, is the split between cool toned greens and warm toned greens. I don't think that I've ever seen that together in a palette like this before, and it really turned my brain on as far as making looks with it is concerned. The way they chose these shades and the way they even arranged them in the palette, I think that's so important, by the way. When a brand can make a palette that makes me think about the way color works in general, that is something. That's how you know somebody with like a real artistic eye is sitting down and thinking about these things. Next up, and this palette definitely falls into the same category as far as getting my wheels turning and making me think about how color works, is Waiting Room. Not only was this part of my favorite collection, the Beetlejuice collection, well, is that my favorite collection? Or was the Amor Eterno collection my favorite? I don't know. It's a real close call at this point. The split between gray and white and deep, rich reds in this palette made me think so much about how I wanted to use them. It gave me so many ideas, and everything in here performs so beautifully. Plus it's Beetlejuice themed. Like, how do you even go wrong with that? This palette, I swear, I don't think this one has left my desk since I got it, which is really saying something because I use new things all the time for this channel, and like things tend to get like lost in the fray a little bit. But this one does not leave my desk. It just sits there and waits for me to use it again, and it doesn't have to wait long because I do it all the damn time. The best color in this, and I know you guys are gonna, if you haven't heard me say this already, be very surprised, is Sandworm. holy shit, this shade, I don't know how to explain it except that it is like the brightest matte shade I have ever used in my life. It is so opaque, it covers everything. It's like a white gray with like a little hint of a blue undertone, and something about it is just so, it just pops. Like as an inner corner highlight by itself, it's unbelievable. I've added it on the top of things and just used it to like do a matte highlight in the middle of the look and like bring some light to it. It just adds so much dimension. It adds so much to the entire palette. And finally, the #1 palette out of all of my Melt palettes is the Muerte palette. The reason this one will always be #1 for me is that, first of all, this color story is literally my favorite combination of colors of all time. If you can mix together reds and teals, I'm there. I'm there for it always. I have reds and teals in my tattoos. I have reds and teals in my home. I love these shades together so much. And then to top that off, the quality is phenomenal and the packaging is so fucking cool. This is so beautiful. It's so well done. It's so subtle. It's so classy, but still has like a little bit of an edge to it. Just everything about this collection was just spot on, chef's kiss, gorgeous. One of my favorite palettes of all time, quite frankly, not just from Melt. So now that I've rambled about it for God knows how long, do me a favor and leave me a comment down below. Let me know how you would rank these palettes. Do you have them all? If you don't, what's your favorite from Melt? What have you tried? What have you loved? What have you not loved as much? Do you have any dupes for these? Just whatever you have to say about what we talked about here in this video, go ahead and leave a comment and I would love to hear it. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. It helps me and it lets me know that you enjoy this type of content, which is always good because I don't want to make content that you don't want to see, quite frankly. Why would I do that? If you'd like to keep up with me between these videos, go ahead and find me over on Instagram at MamMissQuinFace over there. I usually run polls about what videos are coming up on this channel. You get a little behind the scenes, you get to know me a little bit better. There's a little bit more of my personal life on there and stuff. I also post some more creative stuff on my feed from time to time, and I would love to have you over there for that as well. This sweatshirt's really cute, but it's really hot and sweaty under these lights, so I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If not, then I apologize, I guess, but like, why did you get all the way to the end and not click away if that's the case? That was a strange choice. Anyways, that's all for today. Thanks for hanging out. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you in the next one.